Good afternoon from India, and good evening and good morning to all our viewers across the world. This is Pranav Guha Thakurta from Edu TV on a very important subject, that is experiential learning. We have two young men who are heading schools in India and Kuwait with us. We have Dr. Prashant Vasudeva. He is the principal of Gulf Indian School, Kuwait, and he has headed schools in India also. And we have a young dynamic edu leader from Dehradun, India. He runs a very famous school Doon, sorry, called Dehradun Hills Academy in Dehradun. And he's doing a lot of work on experiential learning. In fact, students from rest of the schools like the Doon School come to his school and spend days out there for experiential learning. And I will request Mr. Yudhister to take up the conversation and have advice from Dr. Vasudeva. And I also feel experiential learning is very important because the apple fall down from the tree, then the theory was made. Over to you, Yudhister. Yudhister, sir. I think we have lost connect with Yudhister, sir. Are you there, sir?
Yeah, I think there are some network
Yes, I
issues there.
I'm there. Am I audible?
Very much. So I'll
Very much.
start you to start the conversation. Fine.
Yeah,
And we can have
fine.
advice from Dr. Prasant Vasudeva. Over to you, Yudhister.
All right. Namaste. Good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you are all in. I mean, it's always a pleasure to be on Edu TV and be a part of any session because the topics for most of these sessions are very interesting. And the best part of Edu TV is, I mean, they rightly are the world education broadcast. They connect people from all across the globe. I mean, I have Dr. Vasudeva from Kuwait, and we may have somebody else joining in from some other part of the country. So, I mean, meeting like-minded people, it always brighten ups the day, and there's always so much to learn from each other because, as they say, learning is something which never stops. And when we're talking about experiential learning, I mean, when we have people joining in and working together, exchanging their views. This is an example of experiential learning in itself because everybody is sharing their experiences of what they have learned, how they have learned it, and experiences are what makes life special. And I feel, I mean, as part of somebody working in an education institution, I mean, experiences are what our kids have to be, I mean, a part of, not virtual experiences. Offline experiences in real life matters a lot. So I mean, these days, I mean, at Dehradun Hills Academy, we lay a lot of emphasis on. We have a cultural exchange program happening. Dr. Vasudev with us right now. So we've got volunteers from Italy, we've got volunteers from Nepal, we've got volunteers from Sri Lanka, as well as different parts of India, and they're all. I mean, they're all sharing their views on life, on work culture, on various dynamics that are in play in today's times. And the growth of any child is he or she should be aware of what's happening in the world, and rather than us telling them, all right, go through this particular aspect in a book, or I mean watch a presentation or watch a YouTube video. I mean, nothing like, if I was to invite Dr. Vasudev, please come here to Dehradun and spend a day with my children. I mean, that experience in itself will motivate them to, I mean, take up so many things that you have learned in your, I mean, in your so many years of service. So experiential learning, as they say, is very much needed in today's time. The marketing side of me says that experiential learning is not something new. It is being brandished as experiential learning. But if we look at our Indian knowledge system, experiential learning was part of our Indian knowledge system. Whatever experiences our kids used to always give them that head start globally. हमारे गुरुकुल सिस्टम जितने होते थे, हमारे जितने भी सारे प्रैक्टिकल हैंड्स ऑन लर्निंग होते थे, बिकॉज आई मीन वी यूज्ड टू बिलीव in that curriculum, in that ideology. Our kids would, I mean, if we go into the rural economy, I mean, our kids would I mean, go to the school in the morning, it could be a government school, come back in the evening, help her mother, cook something, help her with so many daily chores. And as a result, when that boy or that girl would be out in the real world, he or she would have various experiences which would help him or her tomorrow. But in today's time, unfortunately, we are living in that virtual world. So we have a lot of experiences on Instagram, YouTube, and various social media platforms. But when it comes to actual on-ground experiences, I think there's a lot of difference between जो हमारे बच्चे आज सीख रहे हैं और जो हमने 20-30 साल पहले एक्सपीरियंस करके सीखा था। तो हम गिरे भी थे, चोट भी लगी थी, वो सारी चीजें हमने खुद से सीखी थी। एंड देयर इज अ फेमस सेइंग, what you learn by your own self, you never forget it. So they don't need Yudhishthir or Vasudev or Pranav to tell them about anything. I mean, they need us to just guide them, mentor them, share our experiences with them. And I would like Dr. Prashant to, to have his say on what does he think is the essence of experiential learning, because as he's heading a premier institution in Kuwait, I mean, it'll bring a perspective of what globally is the relevance of experiential learning. Over to you, Prashant ji.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yudhishtir. Thank you so much, Mr. Pranav Guha Thakurta. Thank you so much, EduTV, for having me once again on this wonderful platform. It's always a pleasure to come and share my thoughts and experiences, which I learn from my students, my colleagues, my mentors who have groomed me over the years. So it's always a pleasure. Well, experiential learning, in my opinion, is, in simplest of terms, it's the process of learning by doing. And as Mr. Yudhishthir rightly said, it's all about our experiences, which I believe should be shared with others, especially the impressionable minds, so that they get a clear picture of what they believe need not be the same as they experience. I'll
Yes.
quote a few examples, just to point out the point that I was making. When I was traveling to India through UAE, it was a transit flight. I happened to be at Dubai airport, wherein I thought the immigration people would, ask for my passport and other travel documents, because that's how it is done in most of the nations. But to my surprise, I found out that there was a machine through which I had to pass by, and that machine scans your eyes and face and other facial features, and that's it, you're done. So there is no need to get your passport stamped, there is no need to get your other travel documents stamped. So technology has, gone that much ahead with these AI and other things coming into the picture, what we call as data sciences.
Yes.
So this was one experience which I'll never forget. And the logic that the Dubai airport authorities gave me is that they want to save paper, and they want to ensure that minimal efforts are put to ensure that the customers have a seamless experience. They don't want to see customers standing in long queues and thereby wasting a lot of time for their turn to go through the whole immigration process. So this was one experience which I felt should definitely be shared with my students. I share it with them because our students keep going for tours and trips to other nations. Another thing which one of my students noticed while he or she was traveling by air was the fact that this child said that the sky is orange. So
Hmm.
I did not, when I was on ground, I did not negate this viewpoint of the child. I appreciated it because I knew, I had an inkling feel that the child must have traveled during twilight or during evening time when, the sun rays appear orange. So that is what the child must have seen or experienced sitting on the window seat of the aeroplane. So accordingly, I can quote many such instances. When I was heading Delhi Public School in Aurangabad, I had the privilege of setting up a science park inside the campus. We had installed many gadgets which not only inculcated scientific temper among the students, but students could get a first hand feel of what a rain meter looks and functions like, how Newton's law of motion can be applied to various gadgets that we come across in our daily lives? How is it that the concept of AM and PM differs? How do you assess the earth revolving around the sun and the moon? So all those things were very nicely explained to my students, courtesy those gadgets that we had installed in the science park. So numerous such instances. Even when you play a game of cricket, it's very easy to coach children by explaining them theory, but only when a child steps on to the 22 yards and starts facing the seam bowlers or the spin bowlers do they actually get to understand the aspects involved, like swing, seam movement, how much revolutions should be put on the ball to make it spin, and how to come on to the front foot or go to the back foot. So these things, as Mr. Yudhishthir said, rightly comes from everyone's experience. In my opinion, experiential learning is all about experience, reflection, conceptualization, and application. And when applied in in the context wherein the students have to be at the central point of learning, in my opinion, through experiential learning, students can better grasp concepts. They have the opportunity to be more creative. They have the opportunity to reflect on what they must have seen vis-a-vis what they might have heard from people. And most importantly, in my book, students' mistakes must become their valuable experiences. Expect the impressionable minds, the young learners, to make mistakes. At the same time, educators must make it a point through experiential learning to clearly convey to them that those mistakes should pave the way for much more significant, valuable experiences in the future. So it is an embodiment of all that, as I said, that can be imbibed, felt, and conveyed to students through one's own learning experiences. And as we rightly discussed in this platform a few days back, learning has no age bar. I can learn from Mr. Yudhishthir. I can learn from a 5-year-old boy. I can learn from somebody who is of my same age. I can even learn from my mother, who is almost 80 now. So, learning is no bar. Every experience teaches individuals certain, valuable life lessons. How do we implement it? How do we execute it? Most importantly, do we believe in sharing our experiences? In my opinion, that determines the success of experiential learning in its true sense.
Very rightly put up, Dr. Vasudev. I was the student or the educationist in me was taking my notes. Uh, like you rightly said, experiences are unique. Experiences are never right or wrong. So one thing I always tell my students, I'm sure you would do the same with yours, is कोई सही गलत नहीं होता. There's no right or wrong experience. You have to put it across, and like you said, everything has a perspective. So when we look at it from a when we look at it from optimistic perspective, then any problem that we faced becomes an experience for the future. And until unless we have experienced anything, we would never be able to reach where we want to. So that thing as educationists becomes paramount, that we are prepared for our students to make mistakes, because it is only human to make mistakes. And those mistakes, so-called mistakes, I don't look at it as mistakes. I would go back and say they are experiences. They're experiences, and experiences always teach us something. And you touched upon reflection. I think, as educationists, we should play more the role of a mentor. Let them reflect on their own. We can give them a perspective. We can tell them what we feel. We again may or may not be right always. I think I would be the first person to put my hand up and tell my students. Whenever I'm with them or discussing anything, don't look at me. It's not that I have answers to everything that you ask me. I am also here learning as you are, and I may not be the best person to resolve every problem that we are facing. So that just emboldens them and just gives them that confidence that okay, there is somebody who's being honest, and we also as stakeholders, as 12-year-olds or 15-year-olds, we may also have the solution to the problem that we are facing. So suddenly they start looking at it from a different perspective. Cut to maybe somebody saying, "Tum bacche ho, tumhe kya pata?" But like you said, a 5-year-old can also teach you and me, or an 80-year-old can tell us something that we would have never thought. Arey हाँ ऐसा भी हो सकता है type. So I think reflection is something that, I mean, we must inculcate in our students, because reflection is probably determines the person's individual's character, how he looks at those certain areas. I mean, you could be gloomy, or you could say, all right, I've learned one way. I mean, I don't know, there's a famous quote. I mean, somebody, I mean, I don't remember the gentleman's name, but somebody rightly said, I've learned 1,000 ways of how not to do it. And then I've
True.
figured out
True.
how should I be able to resolve it, because now those experiences are going to, I mean, make me understand that concept that much more better. If I don't get involved, I would never be able to understand. And that is, I think,
That is
yeah, please.
that is yeah, that is precisely the reason why, I believe that experiential learning is such an apt mechanism where students become the protagonists of their own learning. And that learning should be so very dynamic that it should encourage proactive attitudes. I am reminded of, one example. When I was a class 10 student, I never had the idea of how to learn the working of a nuclear reactor. This was a concept in physics. I had no idea in terms of how to go about learning that concept. I reached out to my teacher, another teacher, another mentor from somewhere else, but none of them could explain that concept to me. Years later, when I was on a drive to Jodhpur, that is when I crossed this area, Pokhran.
Okay.
And when I reached Pokhran, I had the privilege of interacting with a lot of army soldiers there, because it's a restricted territory. And one of those guys, a very learned guy, he had even done his research before getting into Indian Army. He explained all the concepts so very nicely to me, including the underground bunkers. Why is the soil red out there? Is there a possibility of soil regaining its original color? What
Yeah.
are the kinds of tanks that are used? What are those nuclear materials that get used? So that is when I could clearly have an understanding of what was taught to me maybe 15, 20 years ago. So that is how one makes use of those learning experiences to enable better understanding of concepts which perhaps you and I would have
Yeah.
simply memorized, because we never had these options back then. So, in my opinion, I'm very glad that students today use experiential learning as a very potent weapon to share their experiences, rather than indulging in rote learning, or simply memorizing what is there in their textbooks.
Yeah, Mr. Yudhister, I think the net was patchy out there. In fact, I will like support your statement in UAE. What I saw out there, sir, when I was
Yes.
entering UAE at the airport for immigration check and all, they were all the immigration officers sitting in their chairs, and it was stepwise, and they were just seeing the crowd. And if they want more people, they just on 5 lights, and five of the immigration officials were visible. But no wastage of time. And while
Correct.
uh, again, I coming to India, when I was entering the Dubai airport, there were Filipino girls and boys, sir, manning those security sections, and they were, I think, trained that way. They were taught Hindi also. As soon as they saw me that I'm an Indian, they said, "Juta kholo." So I really I really hats off to them. So, sir, I would like to request you how these experiential learning can be inculcated in schools, especially in Indian schools, where I still remember myself, I was cramming things or whatever, learning notes and writing the examination. So, how it can be inculcated in the Indian schools? Over to you, Dr. Vasudeva.
In my opinion, the educators need to keep the analysis simple rather than complicate things, especially when they interact with impressionable minds. Say, for example, they can have a gardening activity wherein, especially in a country like Kuwait, where the sun beats down so hard almost for 7 to 8 months in a year, the temperature hovers here around 48, 50 degrees. So, what my students have observed is when they indulge in any kind of gardening, they quickly come to the conclusion that certain plants, they retain their green color only for 2 3 days, and there afterwards it turns brown, and then finally they die down. That's when they become curious, and then they reach out to their educators. Ma'am or sir, the plant that I saw, which was rich green 3 days ago, now bears a brownish look, and eventually maybe a black color coating takes over. That's when they realize that the plant is no longer going to survive. So
Wow.
this again becomes an experience for somebody in class 1 and 2 to note down that, even plants being living things, they require sunlight, water and other essential ingredients if they have to survive and grow. So this is the simplest way of making the children understand the significance of taking care of plants,
Yeah.
just like the way we take care of ourselves. Now, if I have to go a little higher, I remember when I was in, one of the classes, a child was very curious to know the logic behind an aircraft taking off and an aircraft landing. And this was a class 4 child.
Okay.
Again, the onus was on the educator to keep the explanation simple. Just imagine if the educator would have brought in all those concepts of physics like friction, force, velocity, wind energy, blah, blah, blah. The child would not have understood anything. So the educator also kept his analysis very simple. He went on to explain it in such a simple way that whatever the child wanted to hear in terms of the understanding the basic concept behind an aircraft taking off and landing was beautifully summed up
Wow.
by the educator, because the educator then brought his experience into the picture and empathized. Empathy is very important when you talk about experiential learning. Empathy is very important, something which I don't find school educators really paying attention to. So you need to look
Right.
at things from the perspective of the students and then offer them an explanation that would commensurate or match with perhaps what the student has observed himself or herself. So that is an essential ingredient of experiential learning. Most importantly, in my opinion, as I said, educators in schools should never ever discourage students as far as coming out with out of the box responses are concerned.
Right.
Because as I said, there can be certain responses which may look or sound absurd or weird, but we need to be patient with them. Maybe there could have been the example that I gave you, the sky appeared orange. That's because the flight, I'm sure, was being taken during evening time, and during twilight, the sky indeed appears orange. So there could be exceptions in every situation, and the onus is on educators. When you
Right.
talk about schools, the onus is on educators to patiently hear the viewpoints of students and then arriving at a logical conclusion, so that even the child feels that yes, the opinion, the viewpoint that I shared with my educator has indeed been viewed very seriously. The teacher did not negate my views, maybe instead of negating, supplemented my views by adding something extra. So that is how experiential learning should lead to fruitful outcomes for each and every child. And the educator has to play a quintessential role in giving that important feel to the students.
Wow. That's great. I think Yudhister will also join. And as
Yeah.
you spoke about the sunlight and chlorophyll, and a very good thing is happening out here in Uttarakhand, sir. The government has taken a very good step. Sir, polylights are used over the plants so that the chlorophyll can be made in the night also.
Hmm.
And the plants are growing at the double the speed, sir. Over to you, Yudhister. Yudhister, you are making me feel jealous The AQI is so high in Delhi, and you are sitting on in your lawn. Over to you,
we're
Yudhister.
breathing fresh air. Listening to Dr. Vasudev, I'm sure, his mentors when he was a student, he speaks so well. He's very eloquent when he's speaking, and if I was a student, I would definitely love to be a part of his class. Uh, I
Thank you.
think, I think, as I think, uh, I mean, as you rightly said, education or learning should be made enjoyable. Albert Einstein rightly said that curiosity is very important. I think experiential learning gets back that curiosity in our education system. As teachers, the child should be curious कि यार युधिष्ठिर sir क्या पढ़ाएंगे और कैसे पढ़ाएंगे, rather than go on a mundane thing, open up a smart class and put out and tell them a topic. Whatever limitations will always be there, but despite that, if a teacher is being honest and is committed enough, then experiential learning can be applied in so many ways. How do you allocate a duty? As educators, if we involve students, if we give them certain timelines, that okay, half an hour on a weekly basis, 1 hour on a every second day. Make them part of the decision making process. And the moment a child is part of a decision making process, that is experiential learning in itself. Because from team building to collaborative skills to looking at, oh, I never thought of it that this was the issue. I was looking at it thinking that ye to issue tha hi nahi. So the moment a child starts to think, that is where magic happens. And as a teacher, I mean, each one of us who's a teacher would always say that bacche ko agar, if you get him interested in any topic, it could be the swing or the seam of a cricket ball, or what is reverse swing. The moment he gets curious to understand what happens when the rough side hits the surface, will it swing this way or that way? That very moment he would say, ki, sir, let the school class get over. I would come and sit with you. Sir, mujhe iske bare mein samjhana. That very moment, I think that's a victory for the teacher in itself. Because the moment a child is curious to learn, there are no failures in that student in that way. Because he would always come up with questions. And I think experiential learning aids that whole process. It just makes it that much more enjoyable. So any concept, it could be something related to, a chlorophyll. It could be something related to, time management. It could be something related to, because I have a rule in the school, wherein I tell my students, any rule, if you think, if you have doubts or reservations about why a particular rule is there, come sit with me. If you can convince me that I should be able to think or rethink my decision to change a rule, if you are able to convince me, I'll happily change my viewpoint. So then you are giving that student that respect that, okay, why do we have a rule? We have a rule for this reason. So then automatically he starts to understand our perspective also as educators. Otherwise, there's a lot of time when they don't know why we are telling them to do certain things. And I think we as grown-ups, it's up to us as grown-ups to be that much open and that much honest with them why we are doing what we are doing. Because many times we are made to say or we are made to believe वो बड़ा है उसकी बात आपको माननी चाहिए. I would always say, not always the right thing to do. You should always have that thing in you to question. That the how you question definitely can be something that you should learn. You should not be rude. You should be respectful in how you are questioning somebody. But the idea of questioning will always lead you to become a better person. Because tomorrow, when you are grown up, you should not be a silent or a mute spectator and say, oh, I was not taught to ask my or share my viewpoint. Sharing a viewpoint is very important. And we are living in a world where, the words gets twisted, where, any sentence or any statement of ours can be looked at it from a different connotation. So all the more reasons for us to teach our kids that having a viewpoint is very much important. And that is a mark of
Just
a good educated person if you are able to put across your viewpoint.
just
Yep.
as an extension of what you said, what you are doing, why you're doing. Another fascinating example, recently I overheard two children talking to one another. One was telling the other that, he and his family always, uh, you know, prefer to travel by Kuwait Airways whenever they fly back to India and then, fly back to Kuwait. So I was very curious to join the conversation. I joined their conversation. I asked this boy, why are you saying that? Because I know Kuwait Airways, though, is the number one national carrier here in Kuwait, but it's expensive as well. So I asked him, why do you advocate Kuwait Airways? Everyone perhaps may not be able to afford it. You know what the child told me? He replied in a very fascinating and interesting fashion. He said, there is a reason why my family prefers to travel in Kuwait Airways. Number one, Kuwait Airways perhaps is the only airways across the globe. I think Emirates also does it. I'm not too sure, but here in Kuwait, you can drop your baggage, 12 hours before actually catching the flight, and
Okay.
they'll issue your boarding passes. So this boy was, telling both of us, that his friend and to me, that his father is very particular about not availing leave even on the last day of travel. So how do they went about their job is the father would keep everything ready, luggages and everything would be, kept ready, packed a night before. By 6 in the morning, the father would drop the child to my school, take the luggage to the airport, drop all those luggages, get the boarding passes for all the travelers, goes back to work,
Yeah.
and then, the family straight away goes to the airport because they
Yeah.
already have the boarding passes. So all that they are required to undergo is security check. So
Yeah.
the boy very emphatically said that he also doesn't miss out. If it happens to be the last day of the school, he
Yeah.
is well and truly present in the school. His
Yeah.
father also need not take leave, 1 day leave from the office. He can also be well and truly present in his office. So again, these are very methodical experiences which pave the way for others. I was not aware of it. Now that, even I have started to travel in Kuwait Airways, I avail this benefit. This is really a
No,
benefit which,
something, in the same line, cut to if the child is working in the, let's suppose the operations department or the branding or the marketing thing, he suddenly picked up something. And now many of
absolutely
us would have not understood why are they doing it, but he has suddenly caught
correct.
on the relevance of it.
Yes,
And as a whatever 13, 14, 15 years old student, he's
true,
looking at it from a different perspective altogether. And
correct,
that is what
absolutely
makes him stand apart compared to the rest of the other thousands of students who have not understood,
correct.
including us as grown-ups.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
There is something to learn in just about everything if we give the child that much freedom to explore and share. So, kudos to you because you were a part of that conversation. You
Right.
were part of many people, Prashant ji, would just say, Arey, why should I unnecessarily be a part of it? But because you
No,
thought,
it added to my learning base as well.
exactly,
It added to
precisely.
my knowledge base as well. So
Yeah, it's, it is innumerable experiences with so many kids and with the kind of information that they have at their disposal and with how the world that we are living in. As educators, I think there's so much to learn every day if we open ourselves and if we are open to the idea of engaging with our students. I remember just 15, 20 days back, we were hosting a Founders Day and there was a Russian play being adapted in English and Hindi that we did. And I had a student from Malaysia. She gave a very good suggestion to my art teacher regarding certain issues that they were facing with certain dialogues. Nobody could have thought that 8 or 9 year old third class, fourth class student would be able to solve, which other grown-ups were not able to do that. So, as educators, I think we should look at everything from from an from an optimistic point of view, and look at them as important stakeholders as we are. And probably, the more opportunities we'll give to them, the more they will grow, and the more we will also learn and grow as individuals.
and we must encourage everyone to share these
Very
experiences.
important. Very
If the
important.
experiences if experiences do not get shared, then in my book, that is selfish thinking that is prevailing.
I always have that. I mean, as something. I keep telling that to Pranav also and various people that I meet. I think we need we. I mean, the fact that I adore the work that Pranav does is he gets people on a common platform for them to share. I mean, just because both of us are able to share, there may be so many people who would listen to this conversation of ours of 15-20 minutes, and maybe they'll be able to pick on something from this attribute.
Right.
Pranav, are you there?
Very much, very much. I'm enjoying the conversation between two young boys on experiential learning who are heading schools also. I think the future of our country is pretty bright. I'm very thankful to Dr. Prashant Vasudev. It's the first day of the week in this country, and he took out time for experiential learning. He has been always helping us, like Mr. Yudhister. Mr. Yudhister has been helping us, I think, more than now 10 years now. And I will request Dr. Prashant Vasudev and Mr. Yudhister Puran Singh to visit both the schools. Like Mr. Yudhister can visit Gulf Indian School, Kuwait. And
most welcome.
Mr. Prashant Vasudeva should visit Dehradun Hills Academy in Dehradun, India. I think a lot of students will come up, and we should have some students exchange programs also.
Yes, we can.
So, you have hit the nail on the head. I've just said yes to a very good exchange program with no cost or liability involved to both the schools with BK Birla Center of Excellence in Pune. Wow. My very esteemed colleague, Dr. Rajiv Kumar Chauhan, who not so long ago was heading the Indian School Muscat, the largest school in the whole of Middle East. He was heading Indian School Muscat. Yeah. He was at the helm of affairs there for close to 6 years. Now he has gone back to Pune and is heading BK Birla Center of Excellence, another big, gigantic school based out of Pune. So I have just kind of inked, an agreement with his school, as I said, with no cost or liability for both of us, as far as, an exchange program with the Department of Social Science of both the schools are concerned. I think Mr. Pranav has hit the nail on the head. We must have more of such exchange programs.
Definitely.
And Yudhister has got all the residential facilities also. In fact, best part is the vegetables that grow in his fields and garden. The sandwich are made from those vegetables only. I saw it. It's awesome experience. Same time, Dr. Prashant, I think whatever topic I say him. In fact, in our office there is a very famous saying कि प्रशांत सर को कोई टॉपिक भी ना बोलो बताओ तो भी वो उस पे बोल देंगे, ठीक है ना? So I think what we should, and Prashant sir, we can take some baby steps also, like we can use technology. You can have some programs online with the students of Gulf Indian School, Kuwait, and Dehradun Hills Academy. Am I right?
Always a thumbs up. Always a thumbs up.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, perfect. I mean, it has to start from somewhere. Why not start it from something which can be initiated instantly?
Yes.
Perfect.
On behalf of Yudhister, without taking his consent, I'm extending an invitation to Dr. Prashant Vasudev to come and stay with us in the school. And we can see a lot of other things also in Dehradun. There are historical and geographical importance also. That would be a wonderful thing. And I extend my invitation to you also, Mr. Yudhister, to come and visit Gulf Indian School, Kuwait.
Most welcome. Most welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for both of you.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sure this will help many schools, students, teachers across the world on experiential learning. Thank you. This is Pranav Guha Thakurta from EduTV.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you.